Welcome back to another MECH 1000 video. In this video I'm going to show you how to use the rotate command. I think this can be a really useful tool that I don't think enough students use. So let me start by drawing a rectangle. And I'll draw it very thin and long, so it'll be very obvious when this gets rotated. So I've drawn it basically laying down horizontally. If I want to, I can rotate this now into any position I want to using the rotate command. So I've selected the command. I'm going to choose the object I want to rotate, finish that selection with a right click, and then you have to choose a base point. Now, the base point doesn't have to be on the object. I could choose the origin, for example, but I will choose the left corner, the bottom left corner of this object. And then I can either move my mouse to indicate what angle I want it to rotate at, or I can key it in with the keyboard. So let's say I want it to rotate 30 degrees. I can enter 30, enter, and I've rotated it. Okay, so it took it from its original position and rotated it counterclockwise. AutoCAD wants to do everything in a counterclockwise direction. So if I wanted to rotate it the other way, I'd have to choose rotate, pick the object, choose the rotation point, and then put in -30 to make it go in the clockwise direction. Because otherwise AutoCAD wants to do everything in the counterclockwise direction. So that's rotate. You can rotate it, like I said, you can rotate it about a point away from the object, like I could rotate it about the origin. I could rotate that 45 degrees. I could rotate it about its own center, 30 degrees. And that's about it for just a plain simple rotate. But the really nice thing about rotate is that in addition to doing a rotate, you can do a copy rotate. So this is something that a lot of students, after I teach it to them, they forget about it. And they're working on a drawing, and they're wanting to know how to do something, and I say, well, you should use a copy rotate. And they want to come to the copy command. Say, no, not copy, copy rotate, which begins with the rotate command. You choose the command. What do you want to rotate? I want to rotate this rectangle. You finish your selection with a right-click, enter, or spacebar. You specify your base point, and then before entering the angle you want, you can type C for copy, or just click down here in the command line. And I can put in my angle now of, say, 30 degrees. And so what I've done is I've rotated the object 30 degrees, but I've left the original in position. I made a copy of it, and I rotated the copy. So this is a pretty useful feature, this copy rotate command. It can allow you to essentially do things that you could do with a polar array. Sometimes a polar array might be more than what you need. A polar array is really useful if you want to make multiple copies. If you just want to make one copy and rotate it, you can just use the copy rotate command. That's a little bit simpler than doing an array with a polar array with just 2 items in it, for instance. Another thing I like to use the rotate command for is that when you have to draw a diagonal line, so many drawings we do involve only horizontal and vertical lines. I find that when asked to draw a line at a particular angle, students sometimes forget how to do that. So way back in chapter 1, I think it was, I made a video on how to make diagonal lines. And one of the things I said in that video is never trust the dynamic input. So as I'm drawing this line, if I'm just using my grid snap to choose a point and snap there, the heads-up display, the dynamic input, is telling me that this is a 43-degree angle. And I might click there and think I've just drawn a line that makes a 43-degree angle. But that's not the case. So if I create an angular dimension between these two lines, I can see that that's not exactly 43 degrees. It's 42.5. So it's close but not exact. So never trust that dynamic input heads-up display. So if I want to draw a line that is exactly 43 degrees, how do I do that? Well, as I said back in chapter 1, one way we can do it is by keying in with the keyboard. I'm going to choose my starting point there, and then I'm going to key in with the keyboard the @ symbol, like in an email address, and then I'll choose a length. The length of the line isn't really important here. I'll just choose 5, let's say, and then put in an angle symbol, which is shift, comma, and then I can put an angle of, say, 43. So I can tell it with the keyboard to make a 5-inch line that's exactly at a 43-degree angle. And if I measure that, you'll see it's exactly 43 degrees. The other way you can do it is to draw the line horizontally and then rotate it into position. If I want a line that's exactly at a 43-degree angle, I can draw it first horizontally, and then I can rotate it 43 degrees. Okay, and if I draw another horizontal line here so that I can place an angular dimension between the two, you can see that's exactly 43. So what you want to avoid is these imprecise, approximate angles whenever you're drawing a diagonal line. Anytime you're drawing anything in this class, you want to be very precise about it. That's one of the benefits of using AutoCAD, is that it is so precise. But it's also a bit of a burden because you need to give it precise input. So we don't want, if I ask for an angle of 43 degrees, I don't want 42.5. It needs to be exactly 43. So in other words, you need to either key it in with your keyboard to get it exact, or I recommend drawing it horizontally and then rotating it into the position you want. Another way you can get diagonal lines at intervals of small as 5 degrees is to use your polar tracking. You could get 5, 10, 15, 20, and so on. So we could set our polar tracking to 5-degree increments, and that would allow us to make a 40-degree angle or a 45-degree angle. But in order to get 43, in order to get that kind of oddball number, your two best bets are either using the keyboard input or the rotate command. Okay, so don't forget, copy rotates are actually rotate commands. Never trust your dynamic input, and create specific diagonal lines with the keyboard or the rotate command.